All right, so it is week of the big main event with Solana. We're going to talk a little bit about not only the event that's happening in Lisbon, but also some of the projects that are starting to circle and perform around Solana. And then we'll end up with some very interesting stuff around maybe what the future of Solana and Web3 social might look like. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Let's get into it today. I want to invite you guys over first thing to our website, our YouTube channel. And the reason is we have a whole array of different playlists here, and I want to kind of scan down here because you can catch our CEO interviews there, our Metaverse Gaming, our Gala stuff, the Matic playlist, which is really good, and then right here, the Solana playlist. So if you are looking for a deep dive into Solana, all you have to do is go to the just the Paul Barron Network here on YouTube and just start to scan down and all that stuff in case you guys are listening in over on the podcast side of things right now. All right, let's get into a little bit about what's happening with Sol. Obviously, we saw a little bit of a run-up last week. We were kind of pointing to that in our last Solana video. There are some additional adjustments here that I think could be very big for what's going to happen here on the 2nd through the 4th in Lisbon. First, I want to get into kind of just a detailed analysis. This is kind of how the chain fared in Q3. A few things around this when you look at overall transaction activity increased, which somewhat stabilized quarter over quarter here for Solana. This was obviously based on more users and also network performance. So there were some key features here that, again, are still propping up. Now, yes, Solana did have an outage, so that's a typical thing, but we have not seen any additional outages, which is a good thing. But you can kind of also see the growth on the NFT side of things, Solana's new NFTs on a monthly basis right there. You've got September growing again after a couple of down months here with July and August. And again, that goes back to a little bit what's been happening in the NFT market as a whole. So not anything super scary there, but the fact that we saw that start to move back up is a good thing. Also, macro forces may have stalled the secondary market during Q3 as unique sellers kind of outpaced the buyers. So this too also, from an NFT standpoint, could be a good thing if we start to see some confidence in the NFT side of things. And of course, Solana's good position of where they are in the NFT business could really put them in a very good bird seat. I think they'll be in a position where they could really kind of see what's happening not only in the market, but also dictate some of the growth of where that might look like in the future around NFTs for their platform. And then healthy distribution on total value locked across all applications still exists on Solana. Currently 50% is locked across most of the long tail DeFi protocols, which we've seen here before. And overall, this is still getting, as it grows, as the platform and as the ecosystem grows, I think it's getting more and more solid in the essence of being able to see this as a token that does return to its heyday. So it's just a question of whether or not we can see it truly pump will be the question mark. I'm not totally in on that we'll return to those kind of highs, but I think there's some very interesting aspects to this. Obviously, the event happening here, Breakpoint, November 4th through the 7th. This, I think, is going to be a huge release of a lot of new stuff coming out on Solana. I think we are all going to be surprised on where Solana is going, and I would not put it past them to drop some major partnerships. And stick with me to the end of the video because we're going to talk about one of the major partnerships that might be in brewing, and we'll talk about how that might play out. Also, the size of this event is pretty crazy. If you just look at their Breakpoint Twitter account, you can kind of see just the amount of locations that they're running here within Lisbon. It's going to be pretty. It reminds me a lot of like what South by Southwest is. If you guys have never been to South by Southwest, they move it all around the city of Austin, whether it's tech, film, media, all those different things, but it has all these different places, and that's exactly what Solana is doing there with Breakpoint. And then if you look at their line list, look at these events. These are the events that are happening over the period of time. Some of this, of course, has already started. You got Lab Week, but all that stuff is kind of going on as we see it happening right now. And then it starts to go into what's happening today. You've got Arweave Demo Day, Women in Web3 media. That's a branch. I mean, you've got so many different projects here that are truly, I think, setting a standard for what we may see in the future in terms of what these events can be and why they need to be, so in depth, because the potential here, I think, for what Solana is about to drop on the market is going to be pretty amazing, just in terms of the amount of innovation that's coming out of this. And that's mostly from the ecosystem side of things. And then you're going to see here's Austin Federa. He's talking a little about, just being there. You can kind of see some of the size and scope of how this event is performing, just to give you kind of a look-see of where Breakpoint. This is going to be huge. And again, I think there are going to be some very key aspects to where releases are going to happen within this. Monkey Ball is one of the projects that has been flying over the last couple of days, over the weekend. Monkey Ball MBS, it's obviously the FIFA of Solana, and the price obviously is pumping right now. We've seen this kind of moving, and it's been in a position, I think, along with a handful of other tokens, that whether it is a timing scenario or if there could be a potential, either it's partnerships or releases of new tech, that could slide into a lot of these derivative tokens that really kind of surface around the overall Solana ecosystem. Here's Solana Spaces, which also is going to feature some new exclusive merch from Ape, Monkey DAO, and then FTX and Steppen also is all set to be announced at Breakpoint. So again, these kind of moves still, and this is one of those things, guys. In the past, what most people have looked at these events as, and I would say this particular event for Solana is different in the sense that most of the time it's buy the rumor, sell the news. And I feel like there may be a scenario that could be at play right now, not only from what's happening at Breakpoint, but some other aspects around the industry of where this may elongate out for Solana. Now remember, when we do these kinds of breakdowns like this, these market movers, the idea behind these is we're going to give you some research, and we'll show a chart today, but it's not investment advice. We'll give you some breakdown on that as well, and where I think maybe the market is going with Solana, because it does have some very interesting aspects. Here's another, minting now. This is on the Sega Solana mobile's phone. So now you can mint within the platform on mobile. This to me has probably one of the most interesting and intriguing upsides for a Web3 mobile device, because remember, this still is around $1,000 phone, and the opportunity here is pretty significant. So you can kind of see here a little bit. Obviously, it's going to have a very uniqueness to it. Here's the mint is live now, so closing in about 13 hours. So a great opportunity to kind of get your Saga Pass NFT. You get early access to Sega itself, events, all that kind of stuff. All of this timing-wise is, again, when you think about Web3 and the innovation of where Web3 is going, you need a couple of things. One, you're going to need a mobile device. The other is going to need a wallet. And then I think from there, you start to need other aspects of how social is going to play into this. And I think crypto social is going to be a thing. Now, we're going to do a deep dive on this as well. And if you're catching this after, make sure and check out our video on Binance and Twitter and what that Twitter strategy might look like in the future, because there's some connections that I think we'll paint here in this video that gives you guys a little bit of rundown. Other things that are happening within it is Solana and their partnership, this is a Helium commercial, but the fact that they're going into a mainstream media type look and feel, this is almost, you could take Verizon and stick a Verizon logo on here, and you would essentially have a commercial that's trying to sell that, which is Verizon's, use case in terms of reach and all that good stuff in terms of their network. That's essentially what Helium is doing with 5G, and the potential, obviously, riding with now within the Solana ecosystem and on the Solana blockchain is a big deal. So the opportunity, I think, to, again, get mainstream adoption or at least mainstream awareness is going to start to seep into a handful of chains that are not going to be that super early, geeks only, tech guys only, people that are going to start to understand what's happening out there. So I think Helium might be onto something with this move, even though I know that in the beginning, there was a lot of people that were against that move. Now, the other one for me that really I pay attention to is how entertainment is going to be utilized, because that's going to be another key focus and a key area around a lot of these ecosystems. So Solana is, of course, setting on a very unique aspect with Audius. So here's Audius right now. They obviously did the acquisition of virtual music experience platform, which is Soundstage.fm. This will start to open up a lot more creative opportunities, not only from creators themselves, but event marketers, a lot of different aspects around where Web3 might go with not only concerts, but other aspects of presentations, possibly events. Maybe even we get to see more things that are even tied around film and music tied together. So there's a lot of opportunities here that I think are starting to float in. And then you can kind of see a little bit of the story here. Decentralized music startup Audius aims to provide virtual concerts via Soundstage, their acquisition. This to me, when I think about where music is going, but more importantly, where independent artists are going, there's only really two players. And the two we've talked about here on this show for quite some time is Gala and Audius. And between those two, there are key differences between them. Now, I would say Gala is definitely going down the direction of the independent artist and possibly the growth of that community, which could be large, very large. The counterplay to that, if you look at this right here, Audius, of course, is tied in with a little bit more of the mainstream. So you've got Katy Perry, Chainsmokers, other music giants that are tied into this. And I think that is the uniqueness between the two platforms that may play out. And whether or not Soundstage is a good play for Audius or not, we'll find out, I think, in a very short period of time. But I'm watching Audius very closely. And a lot of these Solana tokens, including Monkey Ball, we've talked about Audius, even Helium to a certain extent of what they're doing with 5G. All of these are potentially, I think, going to make it to the next level. Now, the one token, though, that I believe is already here is Render. Now, Render is the one that we've talked about here many times within the Solana ecosystem. Again, Render, amazing in the sense of their growth, but also you can kind of look at this tweet right here. Best crypto alpha sits in plain sight. Render is creating let me zoom up on that, the base layer to compute primitive for AI, AR, VR, and other GPU compute intensive processes. Amazon, Google, all those cloud providers cannot compete in speed, cost, or quality. And really what he's talking about here, if you're new to what Render is doing, is, and most of you guys understand how storage, and maybe even to a certain extent how the cloud works, but with Render, they're decentralizing the capability of graphics, rendering capabilities for Web3 and what that demand is going to be, or maybe even Web 2.5. We'll see a lot of conversion of Web 2 types of projects, everything from videos to graphics, film, all sorts of artists that are going to come into this space, as well as the work product that comes in that helps build the creative. All of that, I think, is going to start to move to a more decentralized component, which again gets back into the potential of what Render could truly be over the long term. So again, this is another one that I'm watching as a potential huge opportunity for sure. Then you've got BTN highlights, an eventful week at Render Network and the future of Web3. This was kind of just a whole flow of what they were doing around their most recent event. So Spaces recap, they did the V Studios, a little bit about all of where that's going and the potential there. And there's so many different variations of how Render will be utilized within their whole ecosystem. You have to kind of step outside of just thinking, hey, let's go render a film or let's go render, a graphics package. Think about everything from social media posts to all sorts of intense graphics in games. There are so many potential opportunities here for what they're doing. It really does open up, I think, a great opportunity. And again, all of these tokens are riding over on Solana. And of course, you have Lisbon happening. I think we may get some pretty big news out of Lisbon. And from everything that we're researching and hearing just within our own connections, there seems to be a lot of buzz around where this might be going. So Solana, whether we see this move will be the question mark. I want to jump over to Render right now. You can kind of see the short period of time that Render's had a pretty nice little move, really since October 22nd. What was the number on this? Let's take a look here. So we're setting right at, 40%. So a nice move if you were in a short time swing trade with Render, moving from just right there. Even if you went all the way back here to October 13th, midway, that's less than 2 weeks, what would your numbers have been back in here if you were doing that? Now you're talking about a nice 55% gain. So again, this is one that is still 4% up on the day. It's one that we're watching, on a consistent basis. Audius has been one that we've just added to the CPI as well. So if you guys are into our sentiment data, which we do on the CPI, Crypto Power Index, check some of our links below. You can start seeing a lot of our different sentiment data, all that good stuff. Render has been flying up our CPI charts for some time, so it's not something that I think a lot of our teams have seen. So the other thing that is very interesting to me, as you guys know, is Twitter. Now, Twitter is in a very interesting position right now because of the acquisition, obviously, with Elon, all the news coming out literally over just the weekend. Already changes seem to be happening at just light speed. And I won't go into it in depth today, but I want to run in and I want you to think about some of the people that are involved in this. Now, I got word from insiders that basically the Twitter team this last weekend consisted of a handful of people that are somewhat Silicon Valley insiders that essentially are running Twitter. And when I say running, meaning getting ready to set the course of what will be happening over on Twitter. I want to showcase a couple of guys here. So this article right here from the New Republic, this is David Sachs, Elon, and Peter Thiel. And there's a lot happening with these guys. First of all, they have a very political agenda within San Francisco and where that's kind of going in the future. But they were, I won't say Sachs was part of this, but he was definitely one of the big voices of getting the district attorney outed within San Francisco. San Francisco is a big problem in general. But the other thing that is very interesting when you start drawing connections is the fact that David Sachs is one of the early investors in Solana. And the potential, if we're going to see a Web3 movement on Twitter, which I think we are, without a doubt, we could see Solana maybe making a play into Twitter. And that's the thing that I'm watching very closely. When you put a lot of powerful people into these kinds of circles, they start to connect the dots of all these different projects. Solana has not been really on the front line. Most of the time, what we've heard so far has been from CZ and a lot within Doge community and so on. And obviously Bitcoin kind of a slam dunk. But when we look at other potential cryptos that might play into this Web3 wise, Solana could play into this, Polygon could play into this. But a lot happening right now, I think, with the fact that Sachs is so involved. This guy is making his rounds around conservative media. He was on the Megyn Kelly show. This guy is getting some political power. And there's a couple of things here that concern me around political power. And that is, when you have political power, one of the major things that you need in these kinds of engines is social. And social right now within Twitter, and if there is a tie-in to where all of this is coming from, whether it's Sachs, Jason Calacanis, who is, the guy who runs the All In podcast, shouldn't say runs it, but produces it. All of those guys were at Twitter HQ this weekend. There's a lot of conversations being had between Elon, Peter Thiel, what's happening with Sachs. Calacanis could play into this. He may end up being the next CEO over at Twitter. So with that being the case, there is a lot happening. So right here, you've got another factor around Twitter. And this is Musk ordering staff to work 24/7 on blue tick charge. Now, this is a new fee for basically if you're using Twitter Blue right now, and the ability, Twitter Blue is a paid service, like $5 a month. You don't get much out of it right now, but they're talking about either advancing that for verification, where you're paying on a monthly basis for a verified Twitter account. Obviously, the verification goes through the same way, but there's probably going to be a lot more feature sets within it. Additionally, within this, there's going to be a potential run at video, which I think will most likely make its way through some sort of Vine-esque type scenario. And again, when you get into the need for innovation in something like what's happening with Twitter, who is the number one innovator out there right now? Who is, it's Solana. Solana, I would say, partnership-wise innovator-wise, next to Polygon. Polygon is the other one that's really in kind of a neck-and-neck race. But there is definite moves within this space. So I'm going to be watching this one very closely. It is one that I think, and it always works this way in Silicon Valley. And if you understood the Valley and kind of how things happen there, it's who you know, not what you know. And that to me is a very critical point of where Solana may play into this in the coming months. We may even hear something coming out of Silicon Valley for this, for sure. And then this right here is just so you guys remember, it's not just David Sachs in this. I'm going to go back to a story that's over a year old. This is Chamath Palihapitiya. Now, Palihapitiya is also part of the All In podcast. There are powers at work here, and he was also an early investor. He is one of the co-hosts of the All In podcast with David Sachs, Jason Calacanis, Dave Freeberg. Those are the four. This starts to align very quickly with what Elon's mission is at Twitter. And the interesting aspect around this is who could be playing in the wings in terms of Web3 innovation outside of Bitcoin, Doge, possibly BNB, where we'll see CZ be involved in this. There are some interesting players starting to create alliances here. This means a lot too for crypto Twitter, but also I think means a lot for the innovation that's happening within the Solana ecosystem. So we're going to continue to break this down for you guys as we're going into this. We've got more coming to you as well. Make sure, and if you're not part of our Diamond Circle, or maybe you're not a subscriber over here on YouTube, get over to the channel, subscribe to it, and of course, like a few videos. It'll start showing up in your feed, and hit the Diamond Circle. It's really easy and it's free. If you guys want to reach me, it's out there on Twitter at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.